Right, what are we going to do? The Decline and Fall of the Ideal State, Plato, Book 8. Right, this is where Plato turns his own guns upon himself. Any good philosopher, after putting together a set of ideas, right, then takes these same ideas and puts them against, right, his own ideas. Right, you critique yourself, right, before somebody else does. Right, as part of philosophy. Any idea suggested must then be through the rubric itself to see if it can sustain. Right, so Plato starts looking at how the society may come apart. Even if you got it up and running, say all that was taken care of. That's a big, what if, right? Well, say it was, right? What would happen then, and how would this thing come apart? So Plato's going to talk now about the difficulties and dangers that would face even a functioning, right, just society. So for Plato, you have five basic forms of government. You have the aristocracy, which means the rule of the best, which is kind of his idea for government. You have the small group of people who really know what they're doing and really care about what they're doing and really want to do a good job, right, for the people, right? And this he calls an aristocracy, and it has all four, right, virtues, right, temperance, courage, wisdom, and justice. The next one he calls democracy, means the rule of honor, rule of the warriors, right? This is something like Sparta or Rome, where you have military people that are in command and control of things, right? Now, when you have they shift from an aristocracy to a democracy, right? You have a loss of that wise leadership and therefore you have a decline in virtues. You lose justice as the overall virtue because you need all three, temperance, courage, and wisdom to have justice. And with the loss of wisdom, you have a loss of justice. But you still do have, in a democratic society, warrior society, you're still going to have temperance and discipline, right? You have to have those things in the military, and you're going to have courage. So those two virtues are still there. For Plato, it's the second best form of society. If you can't have an ideal society, you're better off being ruled by people who are at least, right, powerful and control their appetites. Right. After that, we have oligarchy, which is the rule of a few, usually a wealthy few. That's more of a plutocracy, literally. Oligarchy, just be a few people in charge. Typically, right, it's a wealthy few, so it's a rule of the wealthy. Right. Democracy is a rule of the Dims, the tribes of Athens. It comes to mean the rule of everybody, right, the rule of individuals, the rule of mass society. And then we have tyranny, which is the rule of a single, strong, powerful individual. Now, tyranny comes to be a bad name, right, is what most people do with it. Right, you'll have a guy named Phalaris, right? He had a special bowl constructed so you could put people in it, right? And there's a fire underneath it. You open a door at the top of the back of the bowl. You shove somebody in, right? You light the fire underneath, and as they get slowly roasted inside and scream, right? He had the internal tubes designed in the head of the bowl, so that came out of its mouth like the bowl was moving. So he would eat dinner while the bowl moved, while he had thrown people in there. So because of people like this guy, right, tyranny picks up this really bad side to it. And it tends to turn into that, folks, right? After you become the single powerful individual, right, there'll be people that like what you're doing, that are detract from what you're doing. They have to be imprisoned and jailed, and it all becomes very bad. But Plato talk about the very end, right? After we have, right, our aristocracy says, so imagine, right, we don't have enough golds, right? For whatever reason, we haven't been able to replace our leadership class. Right, our council of elders isn't filled, right? Somebody who is not qualified makes their way in, right? One of these things transpires, and you'll see a shift over to the accumulation of private property by those who hold the reins of power. Right, for Plato, when this transpires, you're really going to have a shift to a democratic society. And it's a good thought process to come into this and go, okay, of those five types of government, can I think of a combination of them? Right, can I think of, and in combination of these, right, Plato will look at it. So for instance, today in America, we have oligarchical elements, certainly, well, people with wealth have a far more influence than others that don't. Right, we have democratic aspects of it, certainly have those. Back after World War II, we had a heavy old democratic element, right? We had Eisenhower as president, and old, right, the invasion of Europe, right? A lot of people came back from the military, from the overseas and served in the, right, government, right? So we had a heavier democratic element back in the after World War II. So things will change and shift over time, and depending on where you're, what's going on, and kind of personalities make up your society. For Plato, governments and personalities, these things are interchangeable. So we're looking at a shift of you don't have enough golds, something happens, right? Now the military is effectively taken over society. You're being run by a military governor, right, instead of a class of wise elders who've been educated for 30 years and trained specifically for this job. Now you're being run by military men. You still have the virtues of temperance and courage, but you no longer have, right, wisdom and therefore justice in your society, right? This democratic society for Plato will go on for a while, right? But they'll start accumulating gold, I mean, liking their gold, making storerooms of piles and piles of gold. And their families will start going, well, okay, but Dad's doing pretty good. Maybe I don't have to go out and start fighting. Maybe I have to learn how to fight. You watch the history of Rome; they were very powerful. They owned soldiers for quite some time, and then they got wealthy and didn't start want to do their own fighting. Started hiring mercenaries. Right, same kind of thing's going to happen. Right, Plato thinks here. Right, the democratic society after a few generations, maybe after one. Right, the sons of those fathers will no longer want to take up the hard military life. Will want a life of an easier life, and they'll become investment bankers, right, and things like this. They'll come into a capitalist class. They'll have lots of money to invest, and they'll start then becoming the dominant force in society. So democratic society devolves then into, right, a oligarchy, right, where very few on top, with a lot of money, who are then in control of pretty much how everything works, how everything runs, right. And they'll still have the virtue restraint of temperance for Plato, right. They still have to have discipline, right, to invest your money, not just spend it lavishly all the time, right, to invest it properly. So there's still some restraint on behavior required, but it's only for the purposes of one's self-interest anymore, right? Being very selfish about the entire matter, right? It's not very, right, shall we say, enlightened or wise. Now somebody wants to talk about something about beggars, right? Oligarchies also bringing these beggars, or what I call them, homeless today. We don't have much beggars anymore, right? Individuals who are displaced without any homes, right? For Plato, evidence that other thieves and temple robbers and people like this are also present. So anytime, folks, you have a lot of poor, homeless people around, you can be sure that you have other extremely undesirable types of behavior in the same environment, right? Thieves and whatnot. So once you're starting to get down here, you're starting to get the two classes in society, the rich and the poor, and you're having a divided society that's in conflict with itself. We're kind of seeing a little bit in America today. America's lost its middle class. I think it was last year in 2015, right? America passed the point where the middle class was the largest class in America. It's now the underclass, or what's called the lower class, the poor class. It's now the largest class in America. And things are starting to become very unloose in the 2016 election cycle. Very predictable, very expectable if we read our Aristotle, read our Plato, right? These guys have seen this kind of stuff before, right? Right. When the poor, right, when their ongoing conflict with the oligarchs, when they finally take over, right, offices of government, for Plato is when you have a democracy. And now you have people doing all kinds of things. You've lost all restraints on behavior. Anything and everything is allowable, right? So one day sober, one day hardworking, as one example Plato will use in the text, right? This common idea that there is no more restraint on what should be happening, what should not be happening. Anything and everything is permissible, right? Liberty is appearing everywhere. Even the beasts become full of liberty for Plato. So this is the more conservative side of Plato's thought. You're going to see it. He doesn't like the idea of no rules whatsoever, right, governing how we should behave and what we should do. And for Plato, because that unruled behavior will get out of hand. It gets out of control. And eventually, right, the democracy spends all its money, runs out of this, runs out of that, and now it doesn't know how to solve its problem. And now it's prey to, as Plato will say, right, the possibility of the single powerful individual coming along and making a lot of promises, the demagogue coming down to the marketplace saying, I can solve all your problems, just give me all the power. And very soon this becomes feasible. You elect a single strong person, you put him in power, he's going to clean everything up, everything correct. And then, wow, right, all of a sudden he needs bodyguards because he's unpopular with his new efforts. His new reform programs don't work. So he's got to put a set of bodyguards around him. Watch the history of Rome. The Gracius brothers follows the same exact pattern, right? So anarchy is staved off by the rise of a single powerful individual who's going to represent the people, to protect the people. He rises up, and now you have the tyrant who's got his bodyguard. He puts together a small army, and now he's in command of the city. And for Plato, he starts becoming, right, if you watch the Khmer Rouge, right, they started executing their own population by the end of it, called The Killing Fields. There's a good movie about that in the 1970s, right? 25% of the population of Cambodia had been executed by the Khmer Rouge, right, as capitalist sympathizers, right? So the tyrant becomes a danger even to himself and his own kin. Watch the kings and queens of England, they murdered their own family. So the tyranny is one thing you really want to avoid, and democracy is what allows tyranny to happen. So in order to avoid tyranny, you have to have the restraints on behavior. So you got to start putting temperance, courage, and wisdom in when you get back to justice. Nice thing about Plato is you can go back up the scale. Just because society's going one direction doesn't mean it can't reverse. Right? Like people, we can change directions in our lives, so can societies. So there's good news at the end of Book 8, but it is a cautionary tale of what can happen even from an ideal society.